I really appreciated your opening. It was so heartfelt. And it just brought back so many memories of what this last year truly has been. That first month after the pandemic first hit, my life as I knew it was no more for so many different ways. But once I found the ability to have meetings and to hear speakers online, real time, it was a gift that I had never experienced before, truly. And it's never stopped being a gift. It truly is. And I'm so grateful I was able to meet you. Thank goodness, through that. And boy, it really touched my heart. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm Joyce C from Fairland, Indiana. I've been in Al-Anon just over 26 years. I came in 1995. I love Al-Anon. Al-Anon has changed my life. It's helped me learn how to deal with life on life's terms and realize that I'm okay no matter what's going on in my life. And there's been a lot going on in my life since I first started. I haven't done this deal perfectly, but I've done the very best I can do every day. I've been fortunate that I've been one of the ones that have continued to go. I've never stopped going since I started on April 16th or thereabouts. I just love our program. It just changed my life, truly. And it taught me all about choices. And it allowed me to be the woman I am today and to know that I do have value and I do matter and I like me today. And I'm grateful for all that. I really am. Service has been a huge part of my recovery. I love service. Now, I learned early on, there are all kinds of service. I didn't have to be at the area level doing things to be of service. I learned how to be of service just by showing up early and greeting people. I love hugs. Hugs just made me feel good. They made me feel welcome. They made me feel loved. And I became a greeter very early on. And I've always greeted the newcomers. Now I don't hug folks anymore, but I always really work to welcome the newcomers and allow them to know more about Al-Anon and that they're very welcome. And never forget how I felt when I first walked into those rooms and somebody reached out to hug me and to welcome me and what that meant to me. So welcoming people, that was the big first service for me. Coming early and helping set up the chairs and putting the chairs away and learning how to set the books out and where they were at and learning how to make the coffee. I mean, they may sound simple, but they were not for me. They were, I was becoming a part of my group. I became a part of my meeting, and I learned a lot about fellowship through that and feeling a part of, and also contributing. And so that was my first service that I ever did. And I still, to this day, I do that. I show up early. Now, I'm not one much to hang out a lot after. I do some, especially to answer questions if anybody's got any, or just to make them newcomers feel welcome. However, I'm an early riser and I tend to be early on all things. So that's just how I am. And not everybody doesn't bring all things to all the meetings, no one person is the meeting, and I just do the best I can. So that was my beginning of service. And early on, they told me, when I first went, I felt hope. In my first meeting, I felt like there was somebody there with the lights on. And by that, I mean that I wanted what they had. They were very alert. They were smiling. They had what I wanted, and I didn't know what they had. I didn't know what to call it, but I just felt it. And I just felt like, I want that. What do I have to do to get this? And they told me to stick with the winners. And I just kept going and doing what they told me to do. And I had been very much wrapped up in other people's lives when I first came in. And I just was tired of always saying yes, always doing what everybody always told me to do, because that was just how I lived my life. And then being resentful and very passive aggressive. So they told me to do what they told, whatever they said, they go, well, we're going to do this. Why don't you sign up for this? You want to go here? You want to go there? So early on, I went to area assemblies. I went to district meetings. I went to information service meetings because they invited me and they made me feel welcome. And I was curious. I'm very much a curious George. I want to learn all about everything. I'm very interested. And so that's what I did. I just rode along And I went to those meetings and I listened, and especially at area assembly, by the afternoon sessions, or back then we had a 2-day session, I was dying on the vine because I can only talk about a topic so long. And then I find that I'm not listening anymore. I am not hearing what you are telling me. And it just sounds like blah, 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 blah. So that was a real struggle for me. And I decided early on that that was not for me. I was a GR for a very long time, a group rep. I went to those meetings and I represented our group the best I could do. But by the afternoon of a lot of sessions, I tended to just, after lunch, I would get like roam and I'd never make it back into the room. It's just real. I was not perfect at it. But they did tell me, they said, we're going to do, it was actually called For Recovery, the thing that we do on Thursdays now via Zoom, but it was called For Recovery. It was a mini conference. They had 3 AA leads, an Al-Anon and an Al-Anon lead. And they said, we do, Al-Anon does the kitchen and we do the morning stuff. We do a lunch thing and we raise money for information services and we sell our literature there. And then we do a door prize. Okay, so we're gonna, the tickets are $10. We want you to go and help us in the kitchen. Well, immediately I got a resentment because I thought I got to pay $10 to go to something that I'm going to be in a kitchen and I'm not going to hear the speakers and da da da. You know, that's just that crazy talk in my head. But that's what I thought. But I went anyway because they told me to do it, and I paid my $10. And I had decided when I left my second husband and started getting counseling and then going to Al-Anon that I hated to cook and I was never going to cook again. Well, when they told me we had to be in the kitchen, I immediately thought, oh, right now I have to cook. I don't even like to cook. I don't cook for myself. Okay, I'll do it anyway. So I went, all I had to do was put pickles in a baggie and seal them. That was my contribution. And every single speaker that spoke, we stopped what we were doing and we went out and we sat respectfully and listened to them speak. And it was wonderful. We all sat together. I felt a part of. And the fellowship and the fun that I had that day convinced me that service was not half bad and I could do this deal. And I really, really, really had fun. And I did that for many, many years. As a matter of fact, I'd always go and show up and help out if they needed it. Even though we rotated by districts, I didn't care. I still went because I loved it. And I also really learned from there to the speakers really provided a lot of value for me, and listening to them share, not only from Al-Anon, but from the AA perspective. I learned from the AAs a lot about compassion and more about the disease of alcoholism, but I also learned more about going to open speaker meetings for AA and listening to them share. And I really have always really gotten a lot from that. It's funny, I get a lot from AA leads. My husband gets a lot from Al-Anon leads. So and he's in AA. So it's just funny how we get what we need. So that was a beginning of that. And like I say, it wasn't a bad experience at all. And I wasn't too long until they got me being the group secretary and then treasurer. And we combined those two roles in our meetings. And that was fun too, because it was a service commitment where I needed to sit up and show up every single week. I needed to be there so I could do my part. And that for me, for a newcomer, that's something that I've found that's really good, because they feel a part of, and it helps to know that they have something that well, for me, it was, I felt accountable and I wanted to do what I had said I would do. And I was there every single week. And I find as I have new people that come, and especially they're kind of struggling a bit, by asking them, are you willing to do this? And they see we're going to help them. Nobody has to do anything alone. In service, every committee I've ever been on, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, I don't know how to do this. How did you do this? How did that work? Can you help me do this? And everybody has always been very accommodating and willing to help me. So there again, I've never felt like I was alone on anything I've done. And I've seen it work in my life, but also others, that that willingness to just be a part of the group and help out. The group rep, I did that for actually, sometimes I struggle with the spirit of rotation. In other words, if nobody is willing to step up and do something, I always am willing to be of service and to do and help. Well, that can be a problem if I don't step down and allow others to step up. If I step up and agree to do it, most people will let you do what you're willing to do. My husband's told me that before. I'll let you do as much as you're willing to do. I didn't like that, but at the time I realized he was very right. So, but in service, it's important to be able, a 3 years rotation for GR. I turned out to be it for 6 years. And then I realized spirit of rotation is very important, and it's important to step back and let others have that opportunity. And even if nobody wants to do it, it's okay to say, I can't do it anymore. It's important somebody else step up. But again, I had my sponsees go into the different meetings with me. And a lot of times somebody would step up because they saw, hey, this isn't half bad. And she's still going to go with me to those meetings. So I don't have to go by myself. And they did step up. I really can't say other than one meeting that I ever had an experience where somebody didn't. And that goes for secretary treasurer or for any of the other roles I played in or that others we needed to fill. So from that, again, I was able to be the voice for my group. I learned also that you can't be a GR for more than one group, at least in our area, because we only have one vote for one GR. So if you become a GR for two groups, then you're basically losing a vote for somebody, so they don't have a voice. And that's really important for me to remember. At the area level, I would go, I do the best I could. Again, I tried. I always learned principles about personalities. And I learned there was a lot that I could learn from that. Plus, I really met a lot of wonderful people from other parts of town, people from other parts of the state. WSO would come. And then when I would go to the conventions, again, being on a committee, it was always 3 districts that would do the different committees. It was really great fun for me. I always liked to be on committees and be a part of helping out. And I tended to lean toward the things that that were my strengths or things I was more familiar with, but I definitely had to do something because I'm not a real creative person. It doesn't come naturally to me. And we had to do skits, and that is a struggle for me. I'm a goofy person when it comes. I mean, I start laughing. Many years ago, I was in a no talent show at Woman to Woman, and with a bunch of people from Indiana. We were doing Peter Pan, but we were doing it with an Al-Anon like perspective. And I was supposed to be Tinkerbell, and I was on green. It was very, just a bunch of stuff put together. It was very casual, I'll say that. And I had like I don't even know what I had on my head, but I was carrying a wand and I had a little basket of glitter so that could be the pixie dust that I would, I would toss about. Well, I got so excited as I was doing my little roll, bouncing around that stage. I lost all my pixie dust before I was supposed to do it. And I mean, it was so funny. I mean, to see it, and there are people that were there that day that still call me Tinkerbell because it was a hoot. I mean, I laughed myself to death. I looked really silly. I did not care. And so I actually have fun when I get outside my comfort zone, but it is not something that comes naturally. I am not wanting to be right there. And but anyway, that's just a simple experience of something I did for service that was definitely okay, we can do this, yay. And so, everybody's got their strengths, right? So sometime into the program, because of that willingness, there was a lady in AA who came to me and she said, hey, I work at the women's prison. They want to bring Al-Anon meetings into the women's prison. And we don't really know who to reach out to. So I said, well, I'm not sure, but I can take your name and number and I'll give it to somebody at my district level or and then they can take it back to the area. So I gave it to our district rep, and 3 months later or so, 4 months, she was in a program. I'd see her at speaker meetings, and she said, hey, Joyce, nobody ever reached out to me about never reached out about the Al-Anon meeting at the prison. And I go, oh, darn. I said, well, I'm sorry. I said, she probably had forgotten or lost the number. I don't know. But I said, give it to me again. And I said, I'll try to figure it out. Well, I'd probably been in the program. Well, I've been in 26 years now. I've lived out here for 9, so that would have been 17. And I did it for about 6 or 7 years. So close to 20, I don't know. I'd probably been in the program close to 10 years. And I didn't really know what to do. So I just thought, well, I can call that woman at the prison and I can ask her about, what she's looking for. So I did. And she told me, hey, we want to bring Al-Anon in. And I knew it was very important that we follow the tradition and be self-supporting. She said, we have some money aside that we can help with resources if you need them. And I knew to say, no, we can't, I'm sorry, we can't accept that because we are self-supporting and we have to keep Al-Anon Al-Anon. That was a good lesson for me to learn. But we'd like you to bring a meeting in. And first she starts talking about it being a moving target, different day every week, different time. I knew there was no way I was going to get anybody to commit to helping me if we didn't know exactly the exact day of the week we had to go and exact time we had to go for how long. So very clear, I had to be, that I knew just from my own work life and what I learned. So I was able to get her to pin her down to one specific day a week. We were going to meet, I want to say it was on Tuesdays, yeah, okay, so it was Tuesdays. There's a girl named Beth that's on here from Indy, and after I did it for 6 or 7 years, again, spirit of rotation, and this wasn't a position that even existed, was a coordinator for the women's prison, and eventually another facility I was helping to do. But what I did is I just thought, well, I can reach out to 4 people. I know 4 people, and I can find at least 4 people that will go every single month with me to a meeting. I'm asking them to commit to 1 meeting a week. I'll go every week for a year. I'll commit to a year. And if I get at least 4 people to commit, that's at least somebody with me every single week to take a meeting into the prison. So that's how it started. So I did that, and then we had to go get TB tests, and then we had to get background checks and fingerprints and all that jazz. So it took us a bit, maybe 2 weeks to even get that done. Nothing simple in the system. And again, I'm just doing the deal. I mean, it wasn't like the district said, go do, public outreach. Nobody, I just did it. So we started taking the meetings in, and at first our district that I was in helped reaching out to other meetings to try to get some to help with getting some books and stuff so we could take some books in. And my groups that I went to contributed some. And we would just always, every week, we'd have a meeting like a format like a normal meeting. We took our format in. Myself or the other person would always chair the meeting at first. Eventually, after a while, again, I did this for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, we would have the girls that would come regularly chair the meeting. So, we had a format. We could always pull it back or help them to learn how to do that if it was getting totally off topic, or if it was just not being Al-Anon. We learned how to really be able to do that and be able to provide that service. And it was wonderful for me. I learned so much from the experience. My son had gotten in trouble when he was 15, was in for juveniles. And I went to see him, and I remember when I went in and they shut the bars, and that noise, that was like a noise I never heard before. That was a noise that was like, oh, I can't get out of here. It was a terrifying noise. And I just remembered that. Well, then many years later, here I am going every week to the women's prison, where I definitely had to go through multiple bars and clicks and noise. And I had to be searched. Most of the time they did not do real detailed searching, but you couldn't take your purse in, you couldn't take anything in, no phone, just very simple stuff, your keys, that was it. And because they didn't want any contraband or anything else brought in and out of the prison. And but later, to have that clicking noise and to hear that after what I'd experienced, by then my son was in prison, I didn't feel that fear anymore. I just felt a part of, I was so grateful we got to go in and to be there for those women. And so we did that. It was sort of like they considered it like a semester for the girls, and they had to do certain things to be able to come to meetings. It wasn't like everybody could go. So there was only a limited number of girls that ever could come every week. But I think we had sometimes up to 15 women that came. And eventually we got enough books where we could offer them all to have a daily reader the first time they came. And then we would do like a once a month, we'd do a book drawing with different different conference approved literature. They could pick which book they wanted. So it was a great way for them to learn more about the Al-Anon literature, but also it was a great way for them to learn more about Al-Anon. And what I learned there was that even though most of those people had been affected by drugs and alcohol, and the things that they had done to get them in trouble was in part because of those things, every single one of them had been affected by growing up in an alcoholic or drug addicted home. And they were really, or in an abusive relationship with somebody, and they definitely needed Al-Anon so bad, so bad. So just did that, and it was a wonderful thing that I got so much out of. I loved it so much. I learned so much, and it gave a lot of women a chance to go with me. I think I ended up having 8 women that would do it. And we ended up usually having 3 people every week that would go. And through that time, and when I see Beth, it reminds me, Beth, and I know Beth won't mind me sharing this because she also shares that her mom was in that prison. And so she could never come in with me as service because her mom was in the system. But her mom decided to come to Al-Anon, and she came with and was with me every week for about 18 months. She came, and she would, by the time she left there, she was chairing meetings, and she was really, I could see her blossoming. I could see her changing. And it was really, really powerful. And later when I decided, I moved out in the country to ask somebody to take over that position of coordinator, I asked Beth to do that. And that was just so cool how that full circle, how that went. Eventually our district did take over, and eventually now it's under our IAS, our Indianapolis Information Services oversees the coordination of the women's prison. We did also take it into another facility, and so I was doing coordination for 2. When I did rotate off, I found another coordinator to do the other facility, and so Beth did the prisons, and this other person, Lisa, did the other. It was a privately held facility where they had women, and that place was very challenging. They kept like having other things during the time that we went there for meetings, and they kept moving everything around, and it just made it very, very challenging to even have a meeting. Eventually they quit having a meeting there. So that was a really big service thing for me, and it also gave me so much back. I learned so much about the system and so much about how much it changes their lives. And many years ago, my husband told my son, he goes, Andy, he goes, you can either make good choices yourself, he goes, or the system will make them for you. And that is what happened. The system will make your choices for you if you choose not to do the right, responsible thing. So that experience was great. Then through the years, again, like I say, I've done different, been a part of committees for conventions, but also conferences. And I'd not ever really known how to, like, the price was always too high to do things when I first came in the rooms. If I wanted to go and do something or attend something or be a part of something, and my husband or my significant other didn't want to do it, I wouldn't do it because the price was too high. I would pay dearly with violence, verbal and physical abuse, if I went. So I just most of the time didn't go because I wasn't strong enough. I was too afraid. Occasionally I would go, and I definitely would pay the price for that. So I got where I never thought it was okay. And so when I was in Al-Anon for a bit, there was this girl that I went to meetings with. Her name was Kim. And she said that she was always talk about how cruises were so cool and it would be great for a bunch of us to go. So I thought that was so neat. I just thought, I've never really been on a really nice vacation before. Go on a cruise and see all these beautiful places. I want to go. So by then I was in a committed relationship with who's now my husband. And so we talked about planning, to go on this cruise. Well, she'd been talking about it for over a year. And she said, we need to start making our payment to be able to go. We have to pay for 9 months. And it was a certain payment every month in order to pay for our cruise. Well, I went home and I said to my husband, we need to start doing this. And he wasn't my husband then, but we need to start doing this. And he goes, I was on a ship in the Navy. that's all the ship I need to be on. I don't ever want to be on another ship. I don't want to go. And so what I did is I went back to her and I said, we're not going to go. He doesn't want to go, and we're just not going. I had a resentment over that. I stewed about it for a month. I had to process it. I had to think about it. I had to talk with my sponsor about it. I had to figure out what my part in it was. And I realized I really wanted to go. So I went back to him and I go, I understand you don't want to go, and I get it, but I want to go. I'm worth it. And I'm going to save this money for me, and I'm going to do it. And he looks at me and he goes, well, then go. I'd never had anybody tell me, well, then go. I'd always thought the price was too high because I'd never learned in a healthy relationship how to ask for what I need and to do what I need to take care of myself. So I saved that money and I went, and there were like 9 of us. There was a couple couples. The rest were either singles or in a committed relationship. We had 3 or 4 girls in our room. We had a wonderful time and very neat life experiences, things that I'll always treasure, lots of pictures, and it was just great fun. And a lot of those people I'm still good friends with today. That was the first time that I realized that I was important enough that and that I could do what I needed to do to take care of me, and it was okay to ask for what I need and to work toward that. It made me feel very proud of myself, and it made me feel very empowered. And then this one lady came by our meetings as outside business, and shared a flyer about an upcoming event for locally that was going to start in Indiana, and it was a women's conference. And so she lays the flyer down and she leaves. I don't see her again until I go to that conference, but I decide that I want to go. Well, of course, I didn't have a lot of money back then. So I just started saving a little bit at a time till I could have enough to pay for the registration fee. But I signed up and I paid the deposit. And I was really excited about it, but I didn't know anybody else that was going to go. And I just drove by myself and went to this thing. It was in Timbuktu. It was primitive camping. They only had cold water. And we stayed in cabins that had mice turds. It was really not very clean. And it was really, and I'm a big sissy. I mean, I am prissy from the get. I don't like camping. I don't like anything like that, but I had a blast. And from that experience, I saw 2 other girls I knew that were there that weekend. We had a great time. And we decided that the next year we were going to ask to be on the committee because they had better digs. And we figured if we're on the committee, we can have a better place to sleep. So we did do that. And we did go on the committee. I was on that for like 5 or 6 years in different positions. And the one that I really didn't enjoy was being the chair. I talked super fast. I'm sure you guys have picked up on that. I have a really hard time at slowing down and talking slowly. And a lot of times people can't even understand what I say. They think my name is Doris instead of Joyce. And it's just hard sometimes to follow me. It is what it is. I mean, I try to be aware and conscious, but like today, I've been just going 90 miles an hour, and that's me. That's who I am. I did not love that, doing that position. And there was a lady who was an old timer, had been doing these kind of conferences all over the US. And I could sense her disapproval, and I didn't play nice with that. I really, really struggled with that, feeling like I failed. But I did it. I did it to the very end, and I thought, ooh, I hate this. I hate this. I stayed on that committee for another year because I had committed and it was important to finish it out. And then after that year, I rotated off because I felt like I'd done, it wasn't fun anymore. It was just, I was just suiting up and showing up and doing the deal, but I wasn't having fun. And it wasn't because I failed over that position. It was just simply that I realized that when something's not fun anymore, it's really important that you be able to know that you just need to go, to go on and to do other things. And so I did, I just learned from that. And I learned the things that I like to do. Like I said, guys, there's things I enjoy doing, and there's things that I am like, oh, I really don't. And so I never say I want to be the voice. You will not hear Joyce C say, you want to be the voice for the committee, for the convention. Now this year, I'm big into treasury. I said I never wanted to do anything at the area level. Well, be careful what you ask for, because 5 years ago, and like I say, I'm a very inquisitive George. I was at area assembly, and the lady that was the treasurer had, she had done it for part of a year, but then she had her mom was ill, and they needed somebody to stand up. And at the last assembly of the year, they had brought it up and nobody stood. And so then they brought it up again, and I started asking questions. Well, I wanted to know more about it. Well, this one guy from another part of the state looked at me and he goes, "Would you stand?" I didn't have any good reason I couldn't do it. So I said, yeah, I guess I would stand. Yeah, I'll stand for it. So I stood for our area treasurer, which is the state of Indiana, less a couple counties. So I've been doing that for 5 years. The end of this year will be 5 years. I finished her 2-year rotation, and then I did stood again for 3 more years. And this year I'm rotating off. I've already told our chairman that I'm not going to stand again. And I told her that, you know, I'm giving her plenty of time that she can find somebody before the November elections. But I did tell her, I said, just between us, which now all you guys know because you're with it, I'm telling you, I will be there for you. I will still do this until you find somebody. I will not leave you hanging. But I am not going to put my name out there, because once I do, nobody will stand, because they know I'll do it and I do a good job of it. I really like balancing money, doing budgets and spreadsheets and stuff. I'm good at that. I like it. It's fun. Again, I'm having fun. But I also know it's important for Joyce to take care of Joyce. I spend a lot of time doing all that every single week. And I do like it. I do have fun. But there's times where I don't do near the time with my prayer meditation that I want to do, that are important to me. And I started doing Weight Watchers in September, which has been a godsend for me. And I need to walk more. I need to move. And if I'm sitting at my desk doing stuff, I can't do that, because I'm not good at just sitting there and moving my feet. Trust me, it won't happen. So again, it's taking care of myself. And I learned that here in these rooms. So I'm not going to stand for the area treasurer again. She already knows, she's cool with it. And I've given her plenty of notice. And I felt so much peace about it. When I told my sponsor, I could tell, I sort of felt like I had my big girl panties on, and I just felt like I was really doing what I needed to do to take care of Joyce. It felt great, you guys. It really did. It may sound simple to some of y'all, but it was a big step for me. So I told you guys about 4 for Recovery a bit ago, and I got a timer going too, so I don't mess up. And like, I went to that mini conference for many, many years, and then eventually they were no longer self-supporting, and they were really struggling to get enough people to come to pay all their expenses. So they moved to a smaller facility. They did that for a few more years, and then maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they just canceled it. They didn't do it anymore. So last year, there was this guy named Dale who's in the other program, and he reached out to me and he goes, "Hey, Joyce, will you find an Al-Anon speaker for next week for 4 for Recovery?" I go, "Huh?" And he goes, and this was in April of 2020. He said, we're doing a Zoom conference on Thursdays and all our times go by Central. I'm in Eastern, but the taper, Mike McKay is, and that's not really his whole last name, but who's a wonderful, wonderful guy in service. He is facilitated and hosting, this Zoom conference for us, and it's from 10 to 2, typically Central Time. And we have 3 AA speakers and 1 Al-Anon speaker, or we'll do a mix where we'll have like this last week, we had Juanita doing steps 10 and 11 for 2 hours. So we'll have workshops. Sometimes we'll have 2 hours of AA or 2 hours of Al-Anon, but usually it's 3 AA speakers each for an hour and an Al-Anon speaker. That's typically how it is. Jen's actually talked at that for me as well. So I said, yeah, I can do that. So at first it was just find a speaker for a meeting, 1 week. So I did it, and and it was fun because I love listening. Like Mary Pearl is one of my all-time favorites, as many people think. She's actually talking this afternoon on service. And so I was able to ask her, and Rick J from Toronto. They did a workshop on sponsorship, and they did one on relations. They've done multiple ones, and other people that I really have enjoyed. I've asked Louisa to talk. I really, what I do is Stephanie has talked, and she talked on grief, and oh my gosh, so much wonderful recovery. I learned so much from all these people that are here by them sharing. So anyway, I did it the first week, and then he just kept asking me. So the short of it is, I've been finding an Al-Anon speaker every week since this last week was our year. We've been doing it for a year. Now, the first 2 meetings were just AA speakers, so I wasn't a part of that. But then after that, every week there's been Al-Anon and AA. That's a big deal for me because I learned here in our program that this is a family disease, and AA and Al-Anon and Al-Anon are a big part of my recovery, my family, the people I hang out with, that I associate with. And it just really makes me feel really glad that because so many meetings here locally have quit having dual speakers. Even before the pandemic, they would just have an AA speaker. They wouldn't really have the family, the AA and the Al-Anon. They got out of the habit. And there's really not, the Al-Anon meetings around our area have not been as strong as the AA meetings as far as numbers. Now, as far as recovery and enthusiasm, we can rock it. But sometimes, you know, you go into the rooms with AA and there might be 50 people, and you might have only 10 or 15 people in the Al-Anon room. It is what it is, you know. I found the rooms of Al-Anon when I was ready. It took what it took. I knew 5 years before that, he told me, my counselor, a different counselor, said I needed a 12-step program. And I never went to that meeting because it was a bad night of the week. It was a terrible neighborhood. And I just had every excuse under the sun. And I never made it to the first meeting. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to be teachable, and I wasn't ready to change. And I really didn't realize I was a big part of the problem. I had as much of a part in the disease and the insanity of the relationship as my significant other did. And I realized today I am my own qualifier. I am a little nuts, but I am so much better than I was. I was also a lot of a workaholic when I first came around the rooms. I got my self-esteem and I got my self-worth from work. I also got my escape from work. I always, my father was a rager, a binge drinker, and I was always around a very angry male figure when I was growing up. And I was terrified of that. I always walked on eggshells. I was always the chameleon trying to read the room and trying to make everybody happy. And so my first 2 husbands were my father all over again. I married very rageful, angry men. And it was just very sick relationships, but it's all I knew. And it's what I just went to what I knew. So when I was able to, you know, get outside of that and to learn healthier ways to take care of myself, I found that I didn't have to accept unacceptable behavior. I could, like I said before, I can ask for what I need. And I can learn that I don't need my work to make me feel okay. I don't need my work to feel that sense of being of value. I also early on experienced, I went to a meeting once where there was nobody there. Nobody showed up. I'd only been in the program maybe a year. I had my books. They let me come in, and it was the church let me come in because they were having another meeting. And I sat there that whole hour and read my books for that hour. And then they told me I had to leave. Well, my ride wasn't coming for another half hour because their meeting was an hour and a half versus an hour. So I had to go stand outside that church, and I stood outside that church by myself, and I cried because I felt so alone. You know, I had never experienced that in our meetings before. And I realized from that how important it is to sit up and show up every single week. That even though we get recovery and we get better, it's important that we are there, that we have a presence. And I was so grateful early on with the pandemic that we had Zoom, because we never, ever had a week we didn't have a meeting, except for the first 1 or 2 when it very first started. We had a meeting every week. we had new technology. There are many members that didn't come to Zoom. They didn't like it. They didn't trust it. They had their reasons, and I have to respect that. But at the same time, I was so enthusiastic about it, and within just the first week or two, Yvonne started Al-Anon Without Borders, and oh my gosh, Mary Pearl was speaking at that, and John C from Chicago, people I hadn't heard for a really long time because they'd had to retire because of physical problems. Oh my goodness, what the heck? This is a new world for me. And but what I found, guys, is it's still important to show up for my local meetings. It's important to be there and have I have a chair there today. I have a place, and there'll always be. When I started going to these meetings in this little town I live in, there was an Al-Anon meeting that was there in name, but nobody had been going for years, and except for this one guy, and he would come every week, usually 15 minutes late. He would stay for about 30 minutes and then he would leave. And his name was Russell. And he did that most weeks, not every week, but most weeks he showed up. Well, when I moved out here, which again was in 2009, so I think I didn't even know Al-Anon was out here till maybe the end of 2009, maybe 2010, the beginning of the year. And I did my year commitment. Well, I'm going to commit to go to this meeting for a year, and hopefully we can get some more people to come to it. And when I first went, the AAs told me that nobody had been coming, and if somebody showed up for Al-Anon, they would just either take a group conscience because it was a closed meeting for AA and not let them come to their meeting, or a few AAs would go in the other room and sit with that person and talk to them. So that was pretty much the presence of Al-Anon in our little Shelbyville, Indiana. So, which is just a little town that's right next to my little town of Fairland. So I said, well, I'll be here. So I showed up every week. Russell came most weeks. He hadn't been in a formal meeting with like doing the welcome and the preamble and the statement of purpose and the traditions and the steps and the closing for years. He hadn't been doing that format or having a topic and focusing on that topic rather than just talking about how his week is or whatever. So it was really, at first, I mean, I did the best I could. After about 6 months, no, that's not true, maybe 3 months, I started feeling a little bit like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. And I said I was going to do it for a year. I'm doing it. I have to not get any expectations in this. I'm learning something from this. I just need to do this still. So within a very short time after that, people started coming. And, today, since the pandemic, we probably only have about 10, 12 regulars. Before that, we probably had closer to 20, 25. But you know what? It is so cool watching them grow. There's a lady that comes, she's in her 80s. Her name is Betty. And she's been coming for 8 years. 8 years to our rooms. She came with her husband, little old lady. And he only came once. He's passed in the last couple of years. But it is so cool to listen to her share about how much she uses Al-Anon in her life and how much it helps her. There are others that have been coming for 5 years, 6 years. What's even better is that with the pandemic, we started going back to face in that area in May. And we did social distancing and mask wearing and very sanitary. And there's a girl that came in May of last year, and she's still coming. And she's working on her steps, and she's working on step 10 now. And the growth I've seen in her name is Bev. I'm so proud of her. I just have seen such huge growth in her. And because of Zoom, I was able to meet with my sponsees now every single week with Zoom. We meet. We only might meet for 15 minutes. We might meet for 30. We might meet for an hour. And working with different ones on different steps they're on, or working on just a check-in and how's things going. It's allowed me to reconnect with some that I really had kind of just heard from them whenever the crap was hitting the fan. And it's really great to get to know them better, the new ones as well as the ones that have been around. And I get to meet with my sponsor, which, by the way, and this is how I'll close, I changed sponsors during all this. My sponsor that I hadn't been coming to meetings anymore. She was in the rooms when I first came, but she hadn't come for over 2 years to Al-Anon. that wasn't okay with me. It was important for my sponsor to go to Al-Anon meetings like I did and to be there and to be able to give back. But that was her choice. And I stewed about it. I don't ever do anything fast. I have to think about it. And I stewed about it for a year, that it wasn't okay, but I loved her. I really cared about her. And I was doing okay. I really was doing okay. And I have lots of friends in the program that I still interacted with a lot. And I did meet with her actually at least once a month. So during the pandemic, I went to meetings with this person, my new sponsor, and I was able to, we were always together. Wherever I was, she would quite often be there. We both did a lot of the same workshops. And we've known each other since mid 90s. So I think it was like the late 90s, but it was just so cool because a good friend that I already had, I was able to realize I want to ask her to be my sponsor. So of course I had to talk to my old sponsor, which the first time I ever had to do that was very hard, but I it's important for me to own my where I'm at and to be real. So I was able to do that, and it was very cool. We're still great friends. And so my new sponsor, we meet with every week on Zoom. And I love that. I love that accountability, and I love the ability. It's allowed us both, and we worked through the steps together already. It's been wonderful. So I love the opportunity to get to know her better and for her to get to know me better. And I'm going to close with that. So thank you very much for allowing me to be of service.